Charlie Henson. It's August the 29th, 1997. I'm with Robert L. Cooper at the 12th Armored Division reunion in Columbus, Ohio. First, Mr. Cooper, I would like to ask you to give us your full name, where you were born, and the date of your birth.
Oh, I was born in, my name is Bob Cooper. I was born in Faulkton, South Dakota, 14th of April, 1921.
Tell me your mother's name and your father's name.
My dad's name was Jim Cooper, and my mother's name was Margaret Cooper.
What was her maiden name?
Johnson.
Johnson. Okay. Tell me about your family. Your mom, your dad, the children, and everything.
My family, or my family now, or my...
Your family back then, as a child.
Oh, I have a wife named Evelyn, and I have two children. One named Lynn Cooper and Tony Gay Lighty. My son lives in Mountain View, California, and my daughter lives in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay. Where did you go to school as a child? And get me from elementary to high school, graduation.
Oh, it was all in the Faulkton vicinity. That's where, Faulkton South,
Okay. What were your interests in junior high school? What did you like to do?
Well, I wasn't too good at studying, but I did get through high school, and I just got out of high school. Well, I got out of high school about 3 years before they drafted me into the Army. And then,
what did your father do? Was he a farmer?
Farmer. He was a farmer.
Now, when you graduated from high school, did you stay on the farm and work with your dad?
Oh, I worked around the country and worked at a ranch for a while. And that's where I was working when they went into the Army. It was on a ranch. So.
Okay. Where were you inducted at?
At Fort Snelling, Minnesota.
And then tell me, get me to, were you in Camp Barkley? Did you go to Camp Barkley?
I went to Camp Campbell first.
Okay. Get me from enlistment to Campbell. Where you trained and all that.
Oh, we trained at Campbell, at Camp Campbell. That's where we took our basic, and then we went out and pulled maneuvers in Tennessee Hills for 2 months to 3 months before they shipped us down to Camp Barkley. And
what is the most vivid memory that you have of the Tennessee maneuvers?
pardon?
The most vivid memory, your general memory of the Tennessee maneuvers? Or did one thing happen that sort of you remember?
I think mostly I can remember most of carrying those rubber pontoon boats down to the Cumberland River and putting them in the water and then paddling across the river with dynamite blowing up in the river. I can remember that.
So they use live ammunition?
Yes. Yeah, I take it was because the water sure was blowing up all around us.
Okay. What position did you train in at Campbell?
Pardon?
What position did you, were you a rifleman or a mortar?
Mortar. I was in the mortar platoon from the day I went into the Army till the day I got out. I was in the mortar platoon. I mean, as soon as they got to Campbell.
Describe a mortar to me. Act like I don't know anything about a mortar, so when somebody hears this tape, you'll have described the mortar.
A mortar?
Uh-huh, mortar.
Well, a mortar is got a base plate about like that, and weighs about 40 pounds. And then it's got a long, about a 3-foot barrel. So it's a 3-inch barrel, and it comes up like that. And then it's got a tripod coming down to the ground. And that, 3 pieces, and they each weigh about 40 pounds. So breaking down when you carry them, each man was carrying about 40 pounds of weight when he was marching.
What else did you carry besides that? When you were in the field and you were, what else? Did you have a backpack, or what all did you have on you as you?
We had a backpack, but we didn't really have to carry that too much. But then generally we had a .30 caliber carbine for rifle, and That's about all we had to carry. And we kept the rest of it. We were, as you know, we were armored, so we didn't have to pack all that stuff with us. So.
When you had 3 men that carried the mortars for you. When it was time to shoot the mortar, work us through that. Who did what, how that worked?
Well, they put it together, and see, it went, all they had, that mortar barrel fit in a socket in the base, and then the tripod clamped right over the top. You could set that up in about 2 seconds and ready to fire. And so and then they had some men carrying shells, mortar shells too. They were about, I'd say about that, like about 3 inches wide, and they weighed about 15 pounds, I'd say, something like that too. So you didn't carry too many. One man didn't carry too many of them either. So.
The mortar, what was it? What was its job? Was its job to hit tanks or half tracks or just in the middle of soldiers? What was its purpose, the mortar?
Well, we could fire up over a hill. See, it was high projectile, and it'd up over the hill, and we could fire. Well, I think our major pass range was about 3,200 yards, so we really didn't have to be at the front line, so we could stay back behind. But we could fire up over, and then it'd come down, and then when a shell burst, well, it had a nose on dynamite, and then when she burst, she just blew up all over. And it was really dynamite that blew.
Okay. When you got through the Tennessee maneuvers, did you and did everyone in your unit go to Barkley?
Yeah, I'd say everybody did. Most of that I ever knew. But the whole division, as far as I can knew was together for the full 3 years, all the time, till we went into combat, and then some got hurt and captured. But as a rule, the whole division was trained together.
So how long did you train at Campbell?
Pardon?
What was the length of time that you trained at Campbell?
Well, I got there in October of '42, and we went out on maneuvers at about, I don't know, June, July, and then we was out in the field till just before Thanksgiving when they shipped us down to Camp Barkley. So.
Tell me your first...
I suppose you've heard this all before.
Some of it doesn't matter. Tell me your first impression the day you got to Camp Campbell. What were you thinking? What was it like for you?
I'll tell you, when we got off the Camel, the first night, it was about dark, and we all unloaded there, and they had a first sergeant come out and met us, and he lined us up there, and had to tell us who we were, and then I remember when he had to tell him what my name was, and I said Bob Cooper, and he said, "Oh no, not another Cooper." And I think he had a couple there before I got there. So.
What kind of guy was your lieutenant? What was he like?
He was a tall Tennessee preacher. That's what he was, backwoods preacher. And he was really a good guy. But he was only about 21 years old himself, so he was first sergeant.
Did he go to Barkley with you, or did he stay at Campbell?
Pardon?
Did he go to Barkley with you?
No. He had quite a story. While we were in Campbell, his wife was having a baby, and they gave him a furlough first, but she didn't have it, so he had to come back. And then when she was ready to have it, he wanted a furlough, and they wouldn't give it to him, so he took one. And when he come back, he was a private.
Okay, so we got you through Campbell. What was it like coming in on the train to Abilene, Texas?
When we got to Abilene, Texas, it was heaven, because we'd been out in Tennessee, and it was getting cold down there. So it was just like summertime when we got to Abilene.
Was it very different than Campbell? Was the training different than it was when you were at Camp Campbell?
No, it was about the same. Only probably a little more advanced, but it was about the same what we've been doing the whole time.
Who was your captain at Barkley?
Who was what?
Who was your captain?
Captain Blackford.
Tell me about Captain Blackford.
Captain Blackford was a real nice guy. He was a tall Texan, and he was a big guy, but everybody liked him. He was a nice guy. That's all I can say about it.
When you left Texas, you probably had certain expectations of what war was. Did you feel like you were ready, and were you ready? Did you feel like you were ready to go?
Well, I think most everybody was getting tired of training, so I think they were in the mood to go when we shipped out.
Was it what you expected?
Pardon?
Was war what you expected from your training?
Yes, I think it was, but I don't think the war was any much worse than our training, only they were shooting live ammunition at us. That was the only difference.
Okay. As you were going across the Atlantic, which boat were you in?
Pardon?
Which ship were you in? What ship were you on when you went to Europe?
Well, I think it was an Enterprise. I don't know. I know. Do you remember the name of the ships that went? Australia, something like that?
There's the Empress of Australia.
That's the one.
Is that the one?
An English ship. Yeah, that's the one.
Give me your impressions, your reactions to that ship.
Oh, no. I don't really want to say what it was.
Okay. It was that bad?
It was that bad,
It was that bad, okay. As you're headed towards, you land in England, but as you're heading towards across the channel to France, what was that like for you? What were your feelings, your expectations?
Well, I don't think we had too much feeling. We went over at night, and I don't think as long as we weren't going to have to fight when we landed, I don't think we was any different than just on going over, that's all.
With the men that you landed with in Europe, how many of those men ended the war with you? Did you go all the way through the war? Were you a prisoner of war or wounded? Or did you fight the whole time?
Pardon? I don't...
Were you wounded or a prisoner of war, or did you started fighting and you made it clear through until the war was over?
Yeah, I was in the same outfit. We were the same crew, and everything was the same.
How many, did most of you make it through it together, or how many made it together?
Most of us did. I'd say 90% of us did or more. That was in the mortar platoon. That was.
Yeah. Tell me about the first battle that you remember.
Well, I think we fired our first round on December 7th, 1944, I believe that, for the mortar platoon. I think that's, and I don't know what I can't remember what we were firing at, but we were firing at something. But that, I don't think, that wasn't too bad a battle. That we were just kind of skirmishing around a bit then, so. But I like our real battle for the whole division. Everybody knows was Herlisheim. I suppose you've heard that lots about the Battle of Herlisheim. So.
Tell me about your experiences in Herlisheim.
Well, we went into that Herlisheim. We never, like I say, the mortar platoon never went in ahead. We always had an observer, and they went in, but we stayed out about on the edge of town. And when our reservists went in and the whole command went in, why, of course they got captured before they did too much, and we couldn't do anything. See, we couldn't fire or nothing because we didn't have no orders to fire, so we couldn't fire at anything because we didn't know where our men were or anything. So we just sat out there, and we sat out there all night long, and it was cold. It was, I don't know, it was really cold. And we just sat out there and waited. And the next day, they finally got firing orders to us. And it went way back behind us. And they're fired, and it come up to us. And our orders was to lay down smoke. And that's what we did. We laid on all the smoke we could, all we had. We laid down that smoke, and then we took off. And when we could see the men coming out of their foxholes and running. They had trucks sitting over there, and to pick them up, you know, they were all dug in, but they couldn't move till we laid down all this smoke. And we laid down the smoke, and then they got out, and we took off too.
For people who will hear this tape and not understand what laying down smoke means, explain that process to us.
Well, we had smoke shells, and when they burst, they just send up a big cloud of smoke. And we just laid it all down along the front. And that's just a big cloud of smoke where the Germans couldn't see what's going through there, so they didn't do anything either. But it was just a big cloud of smoke. And I don't know how many shells we had, but we laid down everything we had.
How long did it take you to realize how bad Herlesheim was? How long did it take the men in general to realize that Herlesheim had cost a lot of lives?
I don't know. I can't.
Did y'all know within a short period of time that y'all had lost a lot of men at Herlesheim?
Well, yeah, I'd say, I don't know. I don't know if I could answer that. I don't know.
So from Herlesheim, where did y'all go?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Like half the time, we didn't know where we was going and where we'd been. But
what was it like when you're in battle? Are you always just surrounded? Are there lots of people around you all the time, or were they spread out?
well, they mostly spread out. It was, or lines behind us or lines in front of us. But
Which company were you in?
headquarters.
Headquarters.
17th, yes.
Okay. What was the job of the headquarters? Was it any different than the other companies?
Yeah, they were heavy weapons. See, we had all the heavy weapons in the headquarters company, like the big assault guns and the big mortars, and then they generally assigned each platoon to a line company like A, B, or C, and so we supported them. That's what we did, and we had the heavy weapons. That's what the headquarters company was.
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know how that worked.
But we had. See, the mortar platoon was split up into 3 squads, and each squad went to a rifle company. See, and they helped them out, supported them on the rifles companies.
When you think about the war, is there any one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind, one experience that you tell all your friends and all your family?
I didn't tell them much of anything.
Do you not?
No.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just never talked about it. I guess
Is it something that you have tried to forget, or is it something that you just rather not talk about?
Well, I don't know whether you wanted to forget it or whether you just didn't want to talk about it. I don't know. I never talked about it. 'Cause
What did you learn about yourself during your days in World War II? Is there something new you found out about yourself?
about myself?
About yourself.
Well, I don't know. I can't say I wasn't scared, because you were scared. You were probably scared all the time, but you didn't really let it show. I mean, it's something that you just put aside, but you were scared, and nobody but could say they weren't scared of it. So,
Was that?
but I never really figured I was going to get killed or anything. I never even thought about that. So.
If you were to look back at that time, who would have been your closest friend? Were y'all close as a squad, or did you have a kind of a buddy that you ran around with?
Well,
or you ran around with, that you were with a lot?
Probably. Well, yeah, I had some close friends, real close friends, but they're all gone now. But someone got to be my platoon sergeant. He was my close friend, but he's gone now.
On your platoon sergeant, did he live through the war?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Thurman Hood. He was a Texan, tall Texan.
Tell me about what kind of leader he was.
He was a good leader, and he went through the war. He liked to play the fiddle, and he carried that fiddle with him all the time, and he played it all the time. And we visited him down in Texas. He lived in Athens, Texas. You know where that's at? Okay, he lived in Athens, Texas. And the last time we were there, he had that fiddle hanging on the wall, but he wouldn't play it. He said he retired that fiddle. But he did. After he went down there and retired, he started a band, little band down there. So he played for dances and things. But he liked to play the fiddle, and he played that all the time.
How did you mentioned a while ago about being fearful all the time. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with the fear, the constant?
Well, I think you pushed it aside. I think that's what I think. You got so you didn't think too much about it, but you were scared, I mean. But you didn't think about it. You didn't let it surface enough to do anything about it.
Where were you when y'all hit Colmar? When you got to the Colmar pocket, where were you in that?
We were right down there fighting with the Free French. Oh. We were right in, and the French are they're crazy people to fight with.
Tell me about the French.
They're not scared of nothing. They had us about doing the same thing as they did, and they were wild down there when we were down there.
I thought y'all were the ones that were called the suicide squad or something.
Yeah, Mr. Division, Suicide Squad, Mr. Division. Yeah.
But the French were crazier than y'all, huh?
Yeah.
Was the way they fought different than the way you fought?
Pardon?
Did the French fight differently, or was it their personalities? I mean, like, you said they were wild or something like that. Well, was it the way they fought that made them wild, or
Yeah,
was
I
it?
think so. I think that's the way.
Okay, what was the difference between you and them? Can you
Well,
explain
they
that?
went at it a little bit different than we did, but they got the results done, I guess, because we got the Germans out of Colmar Pocket, so I just.
Did you do any? Were you aware of the death camps and all that? Were you aware what you saw or what was going on at that time?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What was that like to see all that?
Well, we just joined on, thought maybe it's fun. I don't know, just what we were thinking about it. But
Did you know that those were death camps that y'all were seeing?
pardon?
Did you know the prisoner of war camps and everything? Did y'all realize as soldiers what y'all were seeing when the prisoner of war camps were emptied?
Well, yes. I think the first one camp that we liberated, they come running out of that camp like something you wouldn't believe. I mean, they weren't the death camps, but they were prisoners of war, and they were Australians. I think, seemed like the first one we liberated was kind of Australians, and they come out of that camp like you wouldn't believe. But we fed them that night, and they stayed with us that night, but we get up in the morning, they were all gone. Where they went, we never knew. They just kept going. They weren't going to stay with us any longer. But that's the first. We didn't have too many there where we were at, but I don't know about the rest of the division. But I can remember them coming out of there. It was just.
How did you deal with being tired? Were y'all tired all the time? And if you were, how did you deal with the tiredness?
Tired?
Tired, just being tired. Was it tiring to be in the war?
No,
Physically
not really.
tired?
Not really, I don't think.
When y'all went the 59 miles in a day, where were you in that? Were you on a half track or?
That one tour we made across Germany, that 50-mile race?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were, because they were a light tank ahead of us, and we were the second vehicle when we went across there. That's the way it was. Our lieutenant had decided that we hadn't seen enough of the war up in front, so he pulled us up in front of the convoy. So we led that convoy, second vehicle, the light tank ahead of us. So.
Were y'all on half track or a
Half track.
half track?
Yeah.
And how many were you in there in the half track?
About 3 of us or 4 of us, I think. In that. Of course, our whole platoon was behind us, but we were the second vehicle.
So, did you see a lot of Germans, or was it pretty well cleared out? Did they just kind of go in front of you, or?
Well, they were. I can say that they were on the Autobahn on those bridges, and we could see them laying underneath the bridges. But see, they were getting ready to blow it, but we never stopped. We just kept going, and after we got, I think it was Innsbruck, I think, where we ended up, we found out that they blowed the bridges, and we were practically just a company up there. That's all it was, because they blowed the bridges and they couldn't get us by. So there we sat up there waiting for them rest of the get up the division, and they didn't get there. But
how did y'all eat and stuff? You couldn't get supplies through, could you?
pardon?
Were they able to get supplies to you?
Oh yeah, we had everything we needed up there. Till I don't know how, I can't remember now how long it took before they got into town, but got into Innsbruck. But we weren't too worried, I don't think.
What was the reaction of the German people as y'all came through Germany? Or did you see any German people?
Yeah.
What was their reaction to you as Americans?
They didn't treat us bad. I mean, of course they didn't dare, but we got along with them all right. We didn't have no trouble with them.
When the war was coming to the end, how did you find out that it was going to be over?
Well, that's a good question because we really didn't know it right away. They told us that we got up there, I think it was about the 2nd or 3rd of May, they said the war was over for us, but I don't think the war was over until about the 6th or 7th, was it? And then they finally said that it was all over with, but it was, as far as our company, it was no big celebration, no nothing. I think it was rather real quiet. We didn't have no big celebration that it was over with. I think we were glad that it was over with, but we didn't.
How many points did you have at the end of the war?
Points?
Points. Did you get to come home right after the war, or had you served long enough or did you have to stay?
I had to stay. I didn't have enough points to get out. I was transferred from the 12th over to the 1st Armored I thought, well, here I am in the 1st Armored was set up for the Army occupation, and I was transferred into them to the 1st Armored, and I was there about 2 months or 3 months. Then I finally had enough points, and then they transferred me down to the 7th Armored. So I come home with the 7th Armored. But
what was what month did you come back?
Pardon?
What month did you come back?
Well, we started home in September, but I bought the last part, and I got home. I got discharged the 6th day of October, 1945, and I went in about the 1st of October, so I was just a little bit over 3 years in the Army. So,
looking back on your 3 years, was that overall a good experience for you as a person?
well, yeah, I think so. I think it didn't hurt me at all, I don't think.
Did you, after you came home and started working, did you use some of those same principles that you did when you had to be fighting, like camaraderie or anything like that?
Oh, I think so. I don't think I'd changed all that much.
Okay. What did you do when you came back to America?
Well, I'll tell you, when I got back, I had a wife and 2 children, so I had to go back to work. So I went back on a farm, working on a farm.
How old were your children?
A boy was 18 months, I think, and my daughter was 11 months old when I got home. So I'd never seen her, so.
Wow. Where did your wife stay? Did she just stay in South Dakota?
Yeah, she stayed with her folks. They lived there in Fulton, and she stayed with them.
So then you went back home and
I went back home.
Have you farmed all these years?
No, I never farmed until about 3 years after I got out of the Army. And then we run a grocery store for a couple of years, and then I quit that. Then I went to work for the Highway Department, in the Falk County Highway Department. I worked there for 43 years before I retired.
I don't know how large the city you live in is, but was there a Faulkton? Isn't that the name of your home?
Faulkton, yeah.
Faulkton. Did they make a big deal when y'all came back from war?
No, they didn't.
Were you the only one from your town that went?
Oh no, the whole town practically went there. They weren't hardly anybody left in town when I went.
So, but you came back at different times and.
Oh yeah, they come drifting back in, nobody. So.
Okay. If you were to think, do y'all have grandchildren? Do you have grandchildren?
Do I have grandchildren?
Yeah, do you have grandchildren?
I have 4 grandchildren, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Two boys and 2 girls. Well, let's say your grandchildren have their own children one of these days. Is there something that you would like for them to know either about you or about your war days if they were to get a hold of this tape?
Pardon?
If your great-grandchildren were to listen to this tape one of these days, is there something that you would want them to know about the war?
Well, one thing, I hope that they never have to go. That's one thing. That they never have to go to war. That I never. My son was in the army, and he went to Korea, but he never had to fight over there. Most of the war was almost there, but he spent a year in Korea. My son did afterwards. Whoops, what happened there?
Yeah, just stick it back over there. That'll be fine. There you go. Okay. I'm trying to think of any questions I did not ask you. Is there something that you have thought about that I haven't even asked you?
Well, I think you've asked quite a few.
Have I? Well, I appreciate you talking to us today, Bob, and taking your time and everything. Thanks.
You're welcome.